Hi, I'm Joseph C. Phillips, and joining me today is Dr. Stacy L. Spencer, who is the senior pastor of the New Direction Christian Church here in Memphis, Tennessee, and he's going to speak with us about his new book, groundbreaking book, and perhaps controversial book. It's called Naked and Unashamed: The Journey Toward Sexual Fulfillment in Christian Marriage. Thanks, Dr. Spencer.
Thank you.
I have to say that when I received the book and I began thumbing through it, this was before reading it, I thumbed through it first.
Right.
The first thing that popped in my head was, wait a minute, here's a Christian pastor writing a book about sex, and not just that sex is dirty, which Christians, we're known for thinking sex is bad, but how to have great sex, how to have sexual fulfillment. What's going on? You're writing a book about sex.
Well, I think the correct question is, why haven't we been talking about it? Because sex is something that God meant to be treasured between a man and a woman in holy matrimony. The problem is that the world has made sex dirty. It's up to the church to pick it up and clean it off, because it's always been clean. It's always been a gift. And one of the alarming things that I've discovered is that the divorce rate in church is just as high, if not higher, than the divorce rate outside the church.
Absolutely. Depending on the polls you read,
right.
Christians divorce at or higher than the same rate as atheists. But hold that thought for a second, because I want to go back to something you said. Why don't Christians talk about sex? Why don't pastors, when we go to church, because Christians marry, Christians reproduce, Christians are having sex. Why aren't we talking about sex, and why aren't we talking about it in a healthy way?
Sex has always been seen in the conservative Christian circles as a function of procreation, that couples were supposed to have sex just for the purposes of producing babies. It was not supposed to be recreational. But if you go back to the early Puritan days, Puritans, in fact, encouraged sexual wholeness and pleasure between couples because they knew that it would save them from adultery. So we've given Puritans a bad tag in terms of calling modern Christian sexual standards as Puritanistic, when in fact, the early Puritans believed in a holistic sexual life that would keep people faithful in marriage.
Can you talk a little bit more, just expand on this idea of sexual wholeness? You talk about it in the book. I'd like to you write about it in the book. I'd like to hear you talk about it.
You know, when you go back to Genesis chapter 2, when God created Adam, and Adam was a whole person, that God discovered, wait a minute, something is missing in his life, even though he's a whole person. Put him to sleep, took out of his rib, and made woman. And Adam wakes up and he says, finally, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And the Bible says, and they were naked and unashamed. That was a place of wholeness. There was no perversion. There was no third party. Sex was a good thing. They didn't even know they were naked until after the fall, when Satan comes in, the third party. Satan comes in and dupes the woman into believing that she could be like God, and then she in turn causes her husband to bite into the same sin. And now they're naked and they're hiding themselves. And God comes back in the garden. He says, who told you you were naked? And so you start with being naked and ashamed, and you move to hiding yourselves. And now in postmodern life, we are somewhere between being naked and hiding. We don't have any problem being naked physically, but we have a problem being naked emotionally.
The idea of being uncovered,
right,
honest,
transparent.
Transparent, that's a great word. Transparent with each other, with our spouse.